the thing that radically altered my life, and I hope I can say this on talk radio, I think I can.
You can.
Was that I was in this seminar, I was standing up and I was lecturing, and I was, we had to get up in front of the room and say what we were committed to in the world. And at the time I was committed to bringing self-esteem into the school system. And in the middle of my talk, I was standing in front of the room, and this woman screams out from the back who's leading the seminar, "You're a bitch." And I thought, oh my God, I know that. How does she know? Because I had wrapped myself in this very spiritual, savior, nice girl persona, and here somebody's busting me and saying something, you know, that one word, I don't want to be called. So anyway, to make a very long story short, she started asking me what was good about being a bitch. Of course, all I could see was all the relationships that, you know, hurt, the other people that I pushed away because of it. And then she asked me something. She goes, I was a retailer at the time. This is 25 years ago. She said, if you ever get damaged merchandise, and I said, all the time. She goes, do they ever not want to take it back? And I said, all the time. She goes, does it help you when you're a little bitchy or a little forceful? And all of a sudden, something inside me started to soften. And she said, let me ask you something. If you were remodeling a house and you were $20,000 over budget and 6 weeks late, would it help you to be a little bitchy? And all of a sudden, I realized that this part of me that I hated came bearing gifts. And that experience altered my life forever, because I realized that all these parts of us, you know, maybe you don't like your mean self, but that might be the part of your angry self. That might be the part that can set a boundary, that can say, no, stop that. Maybe you don't like the part of you that is pushy, but that might be the part that gets a book published. So every aspect of us, although it also can bring darkness, it can bring light as well. And if we really understand that, then we can stop. I write about in Why Good People Do Bad Things, you know, the beach ball effect. We can stop suppressing the parts of ourselves and trying to hide them, because that only makes us feel inauthentic. The question to ask yourself every day when you get up is, how can I love myself more? How can I embrace some part of me? How can I find the gift? If God gave me this, there isn't any quality, whatever you want to call it, the divine spirit, the resource, right, this, you know, love energy. God didn't make anybody wrong. And our job is, to evolve our souls, is to say, what lesson can I learn from this quality? How could I use this quality in a constructive way instead of, you know, some way that's going to destroy us, a destructive way? I know I'm giving very long answers.
No, I love it, and so Liz, I love it so much I forgot I was doing a radio show. I was just listening to Debbie Ford. I was like, hey, this is great. It's fantastic. Our feedback, Debbie's amazing. You know, I've always said that, you know, when you look through history, and even like the biblical stories, you always find that the greatest messages come out of the greatest messes, but I've never really thought of it as far as inside with you, like you were just describing. That's fantastic. That's a great way to look at it.
You know, my sister, just so you know, Steve, always said, when I started my career with Deepak Chopra, I did a training with some of his students, and staff. This was 15 years ago. And they all had such major transformations. And one day he invited me to his house and said, what did you do? What did you do? You know, I've never seen anything like it. And really, I had learned it from him when he said, you know, we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, meaning we all have everything. There isn't anything that there isn't a quality that we see, dark or light, that we aren't, and our job is to embrace that. And you and I were talking about that on the break. You know, if you are inspired by me or inspired by Steve or inspired by any teacher, identify the quality that you're seeing in them. You know, what do you like about them or love about them? And you will find a part of yourself that is wanting and needing to be embraced right now.
That's really, really powerful way of freeing yourself.
Yes, we have to free ourselves. I mean, unfortunately, the same thing is true for our darkness, what we don't like on everybody else, and we're judging are the parts of ourselves that need to be embraced and loved. If you think about them as small children, that's what I have everybody do. You know, imagine that you have 20 small children inside. You know, are you going to beat down the ones that feel stupid or unlovable or incompetent or righteous or arrogant? No, you're going to try to love them, and our job is to learn how to really love fully.
And that, so when that's love, the love you're talking about is a very unconditional love.
Yeah, and everybody's looking for it out there, but it doesn't. Nothing exists out there if it doesn't exist in here. And you are God's gift, right? God only gave you one person, except for your children until they turn 18, to be responsible for. And that's ourselves, but yet we fail to give ourselves the love and acknowledgement and care and, like you said earlier, the celebration that we deserve. And, you know, we have to know how hard it is to be a human being. If we just acknowledge how hard it is to survive childhood, we would be so compassionate with ourselves, so unconditionally loving. And it is a daily practice. There is no quick fix. It's every hour I've got to ask, how am I going to love myself today? I just did something really stupid, or I forgot to call that person who was in pain back 3 days ago. You know, we all, no matter what level we're at, you know, I didn't put money, I spent too much money, I didn't exercise, I chose to, you know, eat a steak instead of drinking some wheatgrass. How am I going to forgive myself? And how can I grow from that and be better tomorrow?
So Debbie, it's really embracing your truth, and as Mike in Cincinnati is putting it, embracing your truth and celebrating yourself anyway.
And celebrating yourself anyway, and knowing that if you embrace, let's say, the defective, flawed, hurt, angry part of you, and give that part some love, it's less likely that person, that part of you, is going to act out. I would say in the shadow process, what happens when you tell a 3-year-old not to jump on the bed?
Right. That's the first
thing. They jump on the bed.
Right.
So why would we tell them not to jump on the bed? It's crazy, Steve. It's crazy. We are programmed really backwards, and we must all learn that.
And therefore our social rules become programmed based on our deception as it is. Isn't that the way that works?
Say more about that.
You know, how we then build rules and say what's good, what's bad, and what's disgusting and what's good as far as people's behavior.
Yes.
And we base that on our own lives because we know that we totally understand why they did what they did.
Exactly. Think about the little bully on the playground. He didn't just become a bully. He got bullied. Or the kid that says, you know, somebody says, stop acting like a baby. The mother says it to the child, and then the child goes on the playground and says, you're a baby, you're a wuss, you're a blah, blah, blah. Yes, we disown it in ourselves. We got shamed for it. We deny it in ourselves. We feel ashamed. It's a natural impulse to feel shame. There's healthy shame and toxic shame. These things that we got told don't be that are toxic. And then we go and we project it and we see it in the outer world and we're disgusted. And we see it with all these famous people. And I say, because I've been doing a lot of mainstream PR since Elliot Spitzer, and my book came out on the day that whole story broke. But for the grace of God, we should say about Elliot Spitzer, because that could be any of us.
That could be, and I actually do want to talk about that when we get back. We have to go to commercial, but we're speaking with Debbie Ford. She's the best-selling author of several books, 6 books, including Why Good People Do Bad Things, How to Stop Being Your Own Worst Enemy. Her website is DebbieFord.com. We'll be right back with the last segment of this show.